All right, coming to you live on tape from beautiful Maryville, Virginia. It's the Fairfax Sports Report. My name is Greg Wyszynski of the Connection Newspapers. BJ Kubrel is of the Connection Newspapers. And of course, introducing to all of you people at home, the beautiful and talented Paul Frummelt of the Connection Newspapers. Paul, why don't you tell the folks at home briefly about yourself?
Well, it's an interesting story. No,
Do
you want to go into it? No. I graduated from Fairfax High School and went down to Newport News, Virginia, and went to college at Christopher Newport University. And then after that, I worked at the Daily Press down there, worked on the sports desk as an intern, and now I'm up here.
There you go. Fantastic. You'll be joining us hopefully each and every week here on the Fairfax Sports Report. And of course, before we get rolling with the show today, let's thank the good folks that make this show possible every single week. We're, of course, talking about the underwriters like CCI Screen Printing for all of your screen printing needs, 703-978-0257. And Quality Care Ford Service Center, servicing all makes and models, 703-383-6299. And as seen on Cold Pizza, Glow Pucks and 10-cent beer, the 101 worst ideas in sports history by yours truly. Thank you to our teammates. So there you have it, boys. All right, before we get rolling, let's hit on some news, some notes. We want to mention right here at the top of the program that we have a very, very special guest coming up, hopefully, in a few minutes. Scotty Reynolds, senior, Herndon High School. You might have heard of him, plays a little basketball. Made a big commitment this week to Villanova University and will be joining us via the hotline later in the show. So please do stay tuned for that because it should be a very enlightening conversation. But boys, before we get rolling, let's talk some news and notes, some stuff that's happened. Let's start off with Scotty. I mean, Scotty commits this week. It was down to Villanova in Michigan, evidently, and you were there to witness it all, eh?
Greg, this is the biggest development through the past 2 months on the Scotty Reynolds watch, if you will. and this is something that hasn't been just something that we've been watching, but the whole nation has been watching. Where will Scotty Reynolds go next season? And it's somewhere everybody wants this kid. He's the first McDonald's All-American in this area, Northern Region Public Schools, since 1993. Three-time Northern Region Player of the Year. Obviously, the things happened over at Oklahoma where he had originally committed and signed a national letter of intent to play basketball at Oklahoma University. Kelvin Sampson left for the job at Indiana, and Scotty now made his decision yesterday, visited a whole bunch of schools. We'll get a chance to talk to him about why he made his decision, but we'll let you know that the decision is Villanova University. Many factors played into that. He'll get a chance to tell us why he chose that school a bit later in the show.
It's a very, very interesting situation, and I'm sure the good folks at the University of Michigan aren't too pleased necessarily, but hey, that's the way the ball bounces, right? Another sort of news and notes thing we should touch on at the start of the show, you wrote what I consider to be one of the most provocative columns you've ever written about the sport of lacrosse this week, and if you could just expound on that a little bit, I think the viewers at home would be interested by the viewpoint you take.
Well, here we are in the thick of the lacrosse playoffs. It's the first year that the Virginia High School League will recognize a state tournament for lacrosse. And lacrosse is still a sport that is very popular in high school. It's actually where it's most popular. They have a bunch of feeder leagues around here now that feed in. Maryland is a place where it's really grown, but it's really now just kind of caught fire in Virginia, and it's been earmarked now as the fastest growing sport in the nation.
And in fact, it is the official sport of Canada. I don't know if you knew that. Even more than ice hockey, seriously.
Hockey is not the official
sport
of Canada.
Lacrosse is the official sport. So it is now migrated down to the States.
And they say you learn something new every day, Greg, and that is definitely it. But I want to try to, maybe for some knowledge on the people at home. Something that I wrote that you did mention was quite provocative, and I knew it would be a hot button type thing when I did write it, but I feel that it did need to be said. Through covering lacrosse in the region now and a bunch of good teams in the area and really trying to build the sport up in this area, a lot of coaches think that the Duke lacrosse scandal has kind of taken some wind out of the sails of the fastest growing sport in the nation in lacrosse. And got a chance to talk to some of the big name coaches in the area. Earl Brewer, a coach over at Langley High School, has been doing this for 12 years and just hates to see that this whole scandal has kind of rocked some of the kids that were maybe thinking about getting into lacrosse, has really rocked their tight-knit community of lacrosse. My point, and you can find this story at theconnectionnewspapers.com, just click on any community and click on sports. You can read the column and really, I challenge you to do this exercise, and it's how I started the column. write down the 4 major sports in the United States. We're talking hockey, baseball, football, and basketball.
Hockey
and
first.
I say hockey lightly. Okay? And then leave a space next to each sport. Then next to each sport, write down what image or what moment comes to mind when you think of each of those sports. I argue that the guarantee for football, Joe Namath. The drive, John Elway. For basketball, it might be Christian Laettner's shot at Duke. It might be Jordan's shot over Craig Elo in the 1989 NBA playoffs. For hockey, I don't know, Greg, that's some sport that you may have an image of. Wayne Gretzky, the great one, maybe, scoring goal after goal. For baseball, it may be Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire bumping chests. Like I said in the column,
Yeah.
I hope it's not,
Yeah.
for you baseball fans out there. But the point is, when you think of lacrosse now, do the same exercise. Write down the word lacrosse. Unfortunately, you think of one thing right now, and you think of a rape. My point is, and whether you believe that rape did or did not occur, is irrelevant to this argument. The argument is that the sport's defining moment, up until this point, is a sexual assault, whether it happened or not.
And
That
like
is
you-
the sport's defining moment.
And like you say, you talk to Earl Brewer, you talk to some other people. These are people that are when they wear their lacrosse T-shirts or gear, pimping the fact that they're part of the sport out in public, they're getting asked about it.
Right, and Earl Brewer mentioned that. He said, look, I go out places, I wear my lacrosse gear, and people say, hey, what do you think about that Duke? There's other people that I've talked to, and it's not just Earl, but he's a big name guy out there. There's coaches all over the region that know that this is not indicative of what their teams are about, and unfortunately, it's gotten a bad reputation. And I also argue in the column that, if they are guilty, maybe the sport deserves a bit of a bad reputation to this point. And I know that's inflammatory. I know it's going to upset a lot of lacrosse people, but it's the only way that can force change. If they are guilty, it's the only way that change will happen if you do get a bit of a bad reputation, so you can fight your way out of that. You got to be a bit more on your P's and Q's when things like this happen.
But that's painting with a pretty broad brush. I mean, I think you could maybe say that it would be more indicative of an athlete at Duke than an athlete in lacrosse. But Paul, let me ask you, I know what kind of guy I am. I know that when I go out and I'm meeting people, if they say, oh, I just came back from France. Well, if I hear something about France in the news, I'll say, oh, did you see blah, blah, blah? Do you think the people that bring up the Duke think the lacrosse people are just doing it to make conversation? Or do you really think that in the minds of a lot of people who aren't exposed to the sport like we are, that the Duke lacrosse scandal and lacrosse itself have been forever sort of married together?
Well, you think about if, say, it's the fastest growing sport in the country, but it's still a small sport. So when you see it in the news, you see Duke lacrosse. That's all you're going to see because it's still such a small sport that's all you're going to see. That's your frame of reference when you hear about lacrosse is the alleged Duke rape, and I think that's going to hurt people who wear the lacrosse shirt, people that play lacrosse for a while.
Yeah. So you open up the sports section, like you open up the Post or something.
Yeah.
I mean, usually you're not going to see anything in lacrosse in there unless it's like the NCAA championships that have been going on. You open up now, you see the word lacrosse. It's never going to be in connotation with the sport. It's going to be in connotation with this thing.
You're going to read NBA Finals, baseball interleague, and then Duke lacrosse.
Right.
And that's a problem.
He makes a good point. Paul talked about going into the sports section, and this we have to remember is this is the introduction of this sport into the mainstream. The ambassadors of this sport into the mainstream are accused rapists. This is not to take away from what could be a victim or right now is a potential victim because we don't know the outcome of the case. Mm-hmm. Either way, the mainstream is getting this sport lacrosse now, and this is, like I said, mainstream only. Coaches, fans, players, they know who their heroes are. We don't know who their heroes are. We don't know who's in the National Lacrosse League. Is there a National Lacrosse League?
Well, there's an indoor league.
Is there a hero of that sport? Is there an equivalent of a Jordan in that sport? We don't know who their heroes are. Like I mentioned in the column, this is for people who don't know what a long stick midi is, and this is how they are now going to perceive the sport. I just thought it was worth making the argument, and I think it's unfortunate what's really happened to the sport. But I do think that there is an argument to be made that if they are guilty of what they're being accused of, I do believe that maybe the sport should suffer for a bit. And it's the only way that things will change.
Well, there you go. Well, like I said, it's a very interesting viewpoint, and if you do get a chance to check out the column on connectionnewspapers.com, it's worth your time. So also want to mention real briefly, getting back to high school sports, Robinson tennis. Boys and girls tennis at Robinson's been very good for very long under Coach Paul Fisher. They won a ton of championships in the last week. Drew Courtney beat defending Virginia State champion Thomas Nolan of Chantilly for a singles title. And then Courtney and Mike Smith also won a doubles title. Lindsay Hardenberg and Christine Tran of Robinson won a doubles title. And then, of course, the Robinson boys win a team championship over Madison. So, I mean, they get in the postseason and it's rolling, you know?
And they nailed Madison early on in that tournament. I mean, this is the 3-time Liberty District champion. We have to remember that. I mean, this is a team that's no pushover, and they nailed them in the singles. I mean, they swept them all the way through. So it really shows Robinson's dominance in tennis.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on to some other sports that are currently in the postseason. Let's start off with a little baseball talk. Baseball.
Inside baseball.
Inside baseball talk. The regionals begin this Friday. There are a number of very intriguing matchups going on. I want to mention some district stuff before we get rolling. I mean, I think a big story out of this postseason so far is the Robinson Rams coming into the Concord District for the first time, and all of a sudden they come away with a Concord District championship. I don't necessarily know if people thought they'd be capable of that first time round through the district. You have some baseball powers there, you know, Westfield teams like that, and Robinson comes in and takes the Concord.
Arguably one of the most difficult brackets in the state at the district level. Concord District is no slouch. Robinson comes in its first year after winning the region last year. They lost a lot of kids, and they come in and they win arguably one of the toughest districts in the state. 15-8 right now. They blasted Oakton in the semifinals. Oakton was the number 2 seed. Robinson was the number 3 seed. Oakton did have some players lost due to suspensions and injuries, and we'll get into that a bit later. But talked to Robinson coach Bill Evers after the game, and he said, early on, our DSA took a poll last year of coaches saying, do you want to make this move to the Concord? And Evers was one of the few coaches that actually said, yes, I want to go there. And he knew what he was getting into. His quote, and I can't cite it specifically, but...
Well, I have it here, and I will read it to you, my friend. I wanted to come over here for the competition knowing that every single night you would have to go out and compete. And that's coming from a guy who competed in the Patriot District. Right. They did quite well. They won a regional title coming out of the Patriot District. So, I mean, this is a guy whose team is already a success, but wanted that extra test to maybe push them just a little bit farther to be able to win a state championship.
Speaking of the extra test, A.J. Johnson was a pitcher that helped the Rams get past Herndon in the first round of the district. 8-7, he closed out. He came back after a day, pitched against Oakton in the semifinals. This kid was incredible. A couple other players to mention, Danny Diana and Travis Medina hit a bomb to put them up 4-1 off one of the best pitchers in the district, Benji Kagan of Oakton. Robinson, of course, went on to score 18 runs on 18 hits versus Westfield, which is a perennial powerhouse program out of one of the best districts in the state. You just can't say enough about what Robinson's been able to do in the postseason for baseball and softball and every other sport. Mike McGurk, what are you feeding those kids over in the cafeteria over there at Robinson
They're doing
Secondary?
pretty well this postseason, no question about that. So, Patriot District, South County, another incredibly good story, winning the district championship in their inaugural season. Of course, Mark Luther, the coach of that team, comes over from Hayfield, has a bunch of Hayfield kids on the team. It's not a surprise that the chemistry was as good as it was this season. And Mike Graham, the pitcher there, the junior, comes in, obviously the ace of the staff, pitches a great game against Braddock. He threw 103 pitches on the night, striking out 10 against Braddock in their win in the Patriot District Championship game. And that's a team that they lost to twice during the regular season. So you got to give South County all the credit in the world for coming out and winning that title.
You know, Greg and Paul, this is something you can chime in on, having grown up in this area, played football for Fairfax. Mm-hmm. When a team gets split in half like that, that's tough. And not only did Hayfield lose some of its players, it lost its coach from a team that was a regional contender last year. I saw Graham throwing for Hayfield last year against Herndon, and he shut down a team with some hot bats. So, this is a problem, and maybe not so much a problem, but an issue that maybe should be discussed. Paul, as a member of a former Northern Region team, you've seen some moves around the district during your time. Things have definitely changed in the last 4 years, but these losing teammates, talk a little bit about that and how that kind of, I guess, affects chemistry on a team.
well, not even just teammates, but when I was a junior at Fairfax playing high school football, Tom Verbanek was our coach. And then going to my senior year, he leaves for Westfield, takes his entire staff. I mean, it killed our team.
Right.
We weren't losing players besides, Royster graduating senior. Right. But besides that, I mean, we weren't being split up in any way. We just lost our coach, and it just killed us. It's just when you have a chemistry, when you have a team dynamic, and you lose that somehow, it's hard to recover.
It's true. It's a good point.
Exactly, and I mean, you look at Luther and what he was able to do last year with Hayfield, getting them into the regional tournament, making a run to the regional finals. I mean, clearly, this is a guy who knows how to coach a little bit in the postseason. So anything can happen now with South County. We should say that in the baseball tournament coming up, starting this Friday night, South County does have a pretty difficult draw in the first round against the Langley Saxons, who are a 4 seed coming out of the Liberty. So it ain't going to be easy for the Stallions in the first round of regionals.
Let's prep that game a little bit. I saw Langley take on Madison, and Langley's coming out of a top-heavy district in the Liberty District. Langley is a good team, and they can ball with a lot of the top teams in the region. Problem is, they're in a district with Madison, 21-1 this year, nationally ranked, has a 7-man pitching rotation, which is unheard of at the high school level, has hot bats. They smashed out 14 hits against Langley, 3 home runs in 1 game in the semifinals of the Liberty District Tournament. I mean, this team is just astronomical. And so I guess, we'll get back to prepping that South County Langley game.
You got it, man.
Mr. Wyszynski, take it away.
I believe we have a gentleman on the line that we'd like to speak to. Hello, caller, are you there?
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, what's going on, man?
Oh, nothing, man. Happy.
Yeah, I'm sure you are, Scotty. Scotty Reynolds, of course, on the phone with us, Herndon basketball superstar, and now a proud member of the Villanova University. So why Villanova right off the bat?
Man, I thought it was a no-brainer for real, but nah, I'm just playing. It was a hard decision, honestly, but at the end of the day, being with guys that had committed to like a North Carolina, a Texas, and being with those guys there in the tournament and stuff, everybody thought that Villanova was the funnest team to watch all season, and I thought I could fit in real well with them. And they bringing Curtis Sumner back, who's going to be, a Player of the Year candidate. So I feel like I can help out the team a lot.
Scotty, BJ here from The Connection. I was at your announcement yesterday. It was a bit of an emotional experience for you. Talk a little bit about why it was emotional and what's gone on in the last 2 months that has led up to this decision. I know it was something difficult, and it's not something that a lot of people have had to go through in their lifetime, having lost a coach before even getting to play for that coach in Kelvin Sampson at Oklahoma.
Yeah, it's very difficult because I'm a guy that thrives on relationships, and I was very settled and into the system of Coach Sampson and the coaching staff and Norman. So for him to go up to Hoosier Land, that's what I call it, it kind of hurt a little bit. But at the end of the day, he made a business decision and, or a family decision that best suited him. Good for him, but unfortunately, there's others that have to live on the other end of the stick. And but it was very, very hard because a lot of people didn't understand what I was going through. And I isolated myself, from people that I really didn't want to, but I kind of really needed to. I didn't want to do it, but it kind of forced me into it because the media and people was just all over me, and I ain't really never gone through something like that before.
Talking about that, I read that in the story, and I was sort of intrigued by it, Scotty. I mean, did it get to the point where all of a sudden you're having issues of trust with people that are kind of in your inner circle regarding your decision?
Definitely.
Yeah?
Definitely. I mean, people call me that I had never even spoken to in my life. I'm talking about NBA players, coaches that I never heard from.
What NBA players called you?
I don't really want to put it out there like that.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? But it was. I didn't know. Not to say that was bad, but in the situation I was in, I mean, these people never reached out to me before in their life, And now that I'm available to basically programs that needed a guard or a point guard or whatever, you know, they try their best to persuade me to go to their school, or just thought that was a cool thing to do. But with me, relationships is a big thing, and it was hard for me because I didn't have a lot of time to make a decision or get the close relationship that I would want.
Right.
So I had to look at potential and having that relationship, and I think I can do that with Jay Wright and the coaching staff at Villanova.
And Scotty, there's a couple reasons that you mentioned for wanting to go to Villanova. Obviously they're close to home, and through this experience you learned who's really important in your life, and obviously wanting to be close to home. There's a couple other reasons, though, in there. The guard play focused on by Coach Wright, and the opportunity to go on to the NBA. Coach Wright has shown an ability to make a splash in the NCAA tournament. 3 players will be going into the NBA draft now because of that splash. What are the odds for you, and how much did that play into your decision to want to go to Villanova to get those looks for the next level?
You know, player development is a big thing with Coach Wright, and that's not just with the guards, that's with the big guys too, and that's offense and defense. Randy Floyd was guarding centers at some points in the game, so they kind of explored your whole aspect of your game. And that's what I want to do. I want to become a complete player. And I felt that if I was going to do that, my best chance was, to play at Villanova. And it was also a career decision, too, because I want to go into communications. And I got Philadelphia, New York, New Jersey, Washington, D.C., all around kind of like the area. So it was a business decision for me, and a future decision, and also a career decision, basketball-wise, and life after basketball.
Now, Scotty, those boys in Michigan haven't had a good day since Weber called the timeout, and I know they're probably cheesed off right now at you. Why were they a finalist, and why did you ultimately decide that you didn't want to head there?
Me and Coach Amica is real close, man. He's been there since freshman year. He's been there when I committed to Oklahoma. He's been there after I got my release. So it was real hard to say no to him second time. And I still talk to the players at Michigan to this day. I was actually talking to Javon Shepard and Kay Price today. And players understand my situation, and they understand players are going to make the best decision for themselves. And there's no hard feelings between the players. And sometimes there are hard feelings between coaches. And that's a bad thing, because you don't want anybody to have any grudges against you, because you're just trying to look out for yourself and make a decision for yourself, because it's going to affect you for the rest of your life.
Scotty, that's something we talked about yesterday at your announcement. This was something you struggled with. You're not a guy that talks about yourself a lot. No matter what happened throughout this season, you guys went all the way to the state tournament. You're a 3-time Northern Region Player of the Year, and you have the ability to really get into talking about yourself, but you opted not to do that a lot. But this was a situation where you had to think of yourself, and a lot of people talking to your dad yesterday, he put it best. He said, this is a situation where you're not just saying yes to one program, you're saying no to about a dozen others. I know Maryland, Georgetown were in the running, but I know LSU, Illinois, Wake Forest, Michigan. If I'm missing anybody, throw them in there. But kind of lead us through your process in the last 2 months and what led you ultimately to the decision to go to Villanova.
Man, Oklahoma was in there, Florida, Baylor, but when I put it down to 6 players or 6 teams, I basically put myself in every roster, and it was I probably analyzed it too much, because I was just there putting myself in situations not for next year, but 3 years down the road. and who they were recruiting, and seeing how I would fit in with them and how they would fit in with me, because I'm trying to win a championship, and it was real tough, because I was just going it not just on paper, but just in my head, sleeping about it, waking up thinking about it, people asking me about it. It was just irritating for a little bit sometimes. But when I think about it now, it's a good problem to have.
Hey, Scott. Hey, Scotty. Growing up in Jersey, I was growing up during the real heyday of the Big East. Talk about a little bit the opportunity to play in the Carrier Dome, to play against Georgetown, to play against Jim Calhoun. Did that kind of play into this decision too, the ability to play in what's become a premier conference again?
Yeah, I feel that if you just list teams in the Big East, you're like, wow. Louisville, Connecticut, Syracuse, Pittsburgh, Georgetown. I mean, there's some good coaches in that league, and they're gonna get good players every year. And I want to play against the best, and that's gonna help me. That's gonna bring out the best in me.
Scotty, real quick, this is probably one of the most difficult questions you'll ever have to answer. Did you make a decision in time to get into the video game for next year?
Man. Nah, BJ, you know me, man. I'm a jokester, you know what I mean? And I just like playing around. Sometimes I can't bring out the jokester side of me sometimes, but I thought I should just add that in just to break the ice or whatever.
I'm playing with you,
There
Scotty.
you go.
Yeah.
So there you go. So it's create your own Scotty on the video game.
Yeah, I'm trying to get my mans to give me my number 3. I don't know if he's gonna let me. I'm trying to pay him off $1,000.
Well, there you go. Hopefully you get more. You got more luck than Reggie Bush had, right? Trying to get your number.
Hey,
Right.
Scotty, real quick before we let you go, I know Coach Hall has been a real big part of this for you, and we talked about it yesterday at the announcement. I just wanted to give you the floor a bit to talk about Coach Hall and what he's meant to you, not just through this process, but throughout your career at Herndon High School.
Right. Man, I could talk probably about all night about this. Just to give y'all a little quick, Coach Hall has probably taught me more about. He's probably used the game of basketball in my life to help me a better person than I am a better basketball player, and all about. And that's what being a coach is all about, to help kids grow up and use the situations that you go through to better yourself through life. And that's what a coach is all about. It's not about winning games. It's not about any of that. It's about developing a basketball player and a person's character. And that's what he's done with me. And without him and without my teammates, because my teammates brought the best out of me. And without them and without Coach Hall, without the staff, I wouldn't be in the situation that I am right now. I probably wouldn't be talking to y'all at all.
Hey, Scotty, thanks for your time, man. And it's been a pleasure to watch you grow as a player and a person here in the Northern region. And we'll obviously keep watching you over in the Big East. It's a good spot for you, and we wish you the best of luck, all right?
All right.
All right, thanks for your time, man.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
See you.
Bye.
There you go, Scotty Reynolds.
Well, it's interesting to a lot of times, with these young high school players, we are their voice. They're only heard to the rest of the public who is not a part of their team or in that locker room through the newspaper. And a lot of times, how good of a person they are or how bad of a person they are doesn't really come through on the page. And I think just listening to the guy talk, I think it's pretty evident that he's just a good person.
He's a good person,
and I
yeah.
think Villanova gets a steal. I think he's gonna be successful no matter where he goes. It's something that we talked about yesterday at the announcement, and well wishes to him. And I'm just glad to see it all work out, because I know it was definitely a difficult situation for the past 2 months.
Yeah, I don't know how Baylor lost out, because Baylor was in Paul, you had a chance to see a microcosm of this sort of thing when Brandon Royster was on your team. I mean, obviously he was someone that was heavily recruited and that sort of thing. Did you get a sense of pressure on that kid back when people like Stanford were sniffing around him?
From what I saw from when he was about to graduate, is just, he's got a lot of options. I never saw the pressure for him. Mm-hmm. I just saw that he had these options, and for Stanford, he had wonderful grades. I mean, 4.0 plus grades. So I think he made a good decision in that to focus on. Okay, there's the athletics and the education at Stanford, and so I never really saw the pressure on him. But there definitely is on high school phenoms that everybody's trying to get a piece, and it's hard.
Oh, well, gee, I mean, I don't remember the last time an NBA player called me to try to take a job or something. I mean, but it's.
It was a crazy experience. I talked to his mom and dad while we were there, kind of just waiting around for the announcement to be made, and it was crazy. I mean, the phone just did not stop ringing, and it was constant, and he always picked it up though. So you got to say that's a classy young man for fighting through that process. But like he said too, it's a good problem to have.
Absolutely. All right, let's jump back to. If we can for a second, jump back to baseball real quick. We kind of had a couple of other things. You mentioned Oakton suspensions. Let's talk about that real quick.
Yeah, it's always a juicy topic when there's some suspensions, and it's got to be noted. Oakton did lose 2 players before playing Robinson in the semifinals of the Concord District. It's to take nothing away from the Robinson Rams, who earned that victory regardless. But Oakton did commit 6 errors for having lost 2 players from its infield, 2 to suspensions, and an extra player from an injury from the night before. It was a Friday game played at 1 o'clock. They lost 1 player Thursday night for an injury to his hand, and they lost 2 players the next morning for suspensions for a violation of school and team rules. They lost them 3 hours before the first pitch. They moved around their infield. 6 errors followed. They just couldn't overcome it. 9-4. Coach Scott Rowland, in my opinion, is the Concord District Coach of the Year. Obviously, Westfield coach Chuck Welch did win the award, a very deserving coach. I know Scott Rowland nominated him for that award, so a classy guy to do that. But to do what Oakton did this year, to get the number 2 seed after having lost just about everybody out of its lineup, pretty big for them. We should mention that Oakton could possibly match up with Madison if they both win out to the next level of the regional tournament, and that's just a game that I'm sure will draw every baseball fan in the northern region. 2 coaches that are good friends, Scott Rowland, Pudge Jorman over at Madison. Pudge running an excellent program, 21-1 this year, nationally ranked. Jason Farley, amazing on the mound. Players you've seen on this show, Mark Riffey going to UVA. Just all around would be an incredible matchup, because no matter how good Oakton is one year or how bad Madison is one year, which is never, those rivalry games, teams always get up for each other. I'd love to see it.
And we should also mention that there is the possibility Monday is a baseball day. I mean, they got games at 1 and 4 at Madison and at, where's the other side? Robinson, I think?
Yes, sir.
And there is also the potential of Braddock and Robinson, the old Patriot District rivals, knocking heads in the second round as well. So keep our eyes on that.
You've seen some epic battles of those, I'm sure.
Every single sport, man. It's always interesting. So there you go. So I understand we now have some impossible trivia to send to the viewers this evening, do we?
We do. Viewers, are you on your toes? We've got some trivia for you at home. A little softball trivia, if you will.
Not an easy question. But
never easy when it's softball. It's never easy. Yeah. Folks, what Northern Region softball team has the VHSL record for most consecutive wins?
The Northern Region softball team with the VHSL record for the most consecutive wins?
That's right, Mr. Wyszynski. Take a stab at it.
I'm going to guess Stewart.
Oh.
No?
And the good folks at Stewart definitely take that to heart.
Who is the team?
I will tell you that it was, as a shocker out there to everybody, James Madison holds the record for most consecutive wins. 71 victories over a span of 3 years. They won 3 state titles. It was from 1987 to 1989. The Warhawks also tied for consecutive state championships during that time, as we see here up on the screen. 3 state titles during that time from 1987 to 1989. 71 straight wins.
Wow.
I just couldn't even fathom being on that team where, hey, we're at 55 now. Hey, we're at. I mean,
I can't
just,
fathom being on that team because I'm a dude.
Yeah,
Well,
that's a one reason to fathom
coming in as a sophomore and not losing.
I know, exactly.
That's crazy.
It's extraordinary. Speaking of extraordinary, and speaking of softball, let's talk a little bit about what we saw in the postseason so far. I think one of the more interesting districts this year was the Concord, simply because you had those Concord teams, but then you also throw in the Robinson Rams, who are perennially a tough team, but the Westfield Bulldogs are the ones that take the cake in the Concord.
No surprise. Linda Pirro, Paul, somebody that you've seen over there, and having talked to Dean Farrington over in the Concord district, just a dominant pitcher, and I know you've gotten a chance to see Linda pitch.
What he's always said is she's not the blow the ball past your kind of pitcher. She's one of those that is as Dean Farrington said, she's going to make you hit the pitch that you want to hit. I mean, she's painting the corners. She's not giving you something to hit. And I mean, most of her, it's not 3 strikes swinging and you're out. It's you're going into 5, 6, 7 pitch counts with, full count, and eventually there you go. You hit a ground ball to shortstop and you're out. It's not a strikeout, but you're out anyways. And she's still averaging, around 5 to 7 strikeouts a game anyways.
Well, and most teams in the Concord or any district, you have a dominant pitcher, you're going to do great. Yeah. And I do have to say that we don't do the all Met teams, but I should mention, having read that today, seeing Jesse McCarrick, on the second team, a pitcher over at Oakton High School, was a shocker. I know they've got some other programs in Maryland that kind of trump, the kids here in the northern region, but McCarrick is a highly recruited player that's, going to be pitching at the next level, and was the number 2 seed. I know they got upset early to Westfield in the semifinals, just got caught on the wrong side of the bracket there, but definitely a shocker. But you're looking around the region, there's some other players there that have definitely made names for themselves. Bridget DuBois over at Langley is a player that has just dominated. She's at .552 this year, 2 home runs, 14 doubles, 37 RBIs, and she's got a fielding percentage at second base, .960. So.
And the Saxons, of course, were in the Liberty District.
Right, and they did so in a dominant fashion over Stonebridge, Paul, a team that I know you've gotten a chance to kind of touch on a bit this year. They've got Stonebridge had an excellent team first year in the Liberty District that Langley was able to dominate 12-2 in the Liberty District final. That's not something you see in softball very often. 2 teams that you think are going to be head-to-head, they usually end up being head-to-head in softball, at least. Baseball being a different story, but did they ever dominate 12-2? They just romped by them.
Yeah, and the of course the softball regional tournament starts this Friday as well, and Stonebridge actually draws Lee in the first round. Lee is a team that, if nothing else, can hit the ball. Right. And Stonebridge's offensive outpouring in that game is an indication that maybe they're one of the teams in this region that's going to be able to keep up with Lee's offense. Swinging the bat in the first round. Want to mention Madison. Right. Bit of a record breaker there, eh?
Got to mention Morgan Davis, only a sophomore, and this young lady over at Madison High School's got an older sister on the team. I got a chance to write about that relationship early in the year, but Morgan's gone on to finish out the regular season before even the district tournament started, and here we are in the regional tournament. She finished the regular season tied for the RBI record in the state. Wow. 38 RBI. You may recognize the name, you Northern Region softball fans. Is a Loudon name, but you will recognize Christy Anch's name. Christy Anch was the last player to hit for 38 RBI in a season.
As a pitcher, no less.
And she was a pitcher, too, and had a hell of a bat. Just an all-around softball player. But Morgan Davis, only a sophomore at Madison, hit 38 RBI during the regular season, and definitely has the record for most RBI in a season, VHSL record. So got to say that she's one of the main reasons, along with Kelly Weber on the mound over there at Madison High School, that these players have advanced to get a number 2 seed in the regional tournament. A hell of a number 3 seed in the regional tournament. Hell of a softball team over there at Madison High School, only to complement their baseball team.
There you go. And speaking of breaking streaks or breaking records, West Springfield breaks a 22-game Patriot District winning streak for the West Potomac Wolverines in winning the Patriot District Championship. Jess Thomas, sophomore softball pitcher, MVP of the tournament, holds the Wolverines to 2 runs and 8 hits, and then winds up with 2 RBIs on a double in the 5th off of Wolverines ace Becky Boucher. So West Springfield finds themselves with a number 1 seed in the regional tournament And a quick peek tells me they'll be playing Woodson, and that's a very interesting game, isn't it?
You know, I've been waiting for this to happen all year. I know some of the Gibson ladies over there that went through West Springfield High School. Margaret Gibson, obviously the coach of West Springfield High School, and has a freshman pitcher who is her daughter that pitches for West Springfield, but not many people know her other daughter who pitched for her for 3 years at West Springfield is now at Woodson High School. So West Springfield-Woodson matchup. Will we see a Gibson versus Gibson on the mound? Either way, it will be Gibson versus Gibson, mom versus daughter's team. I'm sure Gibson will be on the mound for Woodson High School. Would love to see that matchup. I think it would be just pretty incredible to see that happen, just for the storyline in itself. But, West Springfield has definitely earned bragging rights in their district, and Woodson is no slouch in the Liberty. And definitely West Springfield should watch out, although I think the scouting report will be pretty complete.
I want to mention just the way things are bracketed in regionals right now. The winner of the first round game, 7 o'clock at West Potomac, it's West Potomac and Madison. The winner of that game will most likely face Westfield in the second round. That could be a very dangerous opponent for the Bulldogs. And also want to mention Loudoun Valley comes in, top seed out of the National District. They play Centerville in the first round. The winner of that game could potentially play Stonebridge. We may have Loudoun Valley and Stonebridge in the second round of the regionals.
Paul, you're a Loudoun guy, and you got to mention that the Loudoun team sometimes. Stonebridge has come in and just made a name for itself in this region, but you also got to mention Valley's a team that comes into the National District because of the way they play their district now, and because of this combination district. Valley will be booted out of that after not this year, not next year, but the year after. They will go over to the Northwest region, but they come in that combination district. They're always the 8th seed no matter what except for football. They play a full football schedule. They come in, they're the 8th seed. They upset everybody all the way to a number 1 seed into the regional tournament. This is a team that everybody should look out for. They're scary. They're good. They've won several titles in the AA out of Loudoun. This is a team that not many people have a scouting report on. Watch out for Loudoun Valley.
Well, that's what's interesting about these Loudoun teams, Loudoun Valley, Stonebridge. Stonebridge coming from a AA, the Dulles District AA, they come into AAA and they're surprising everybody. I mean, they're competing for almost in every sport for a district title, or they're up at the top of the district. So, I've talked to coaches, and they say we were prepared for them. We play a complete AAA schedule. We play hard teams, but they're still losing to Stonebridge. They're still getting surprised by them, and this is their first year. Maybe next year teams will be prepared for Stonebridge, but for right now they're running amok.
And after football, you'd think they would have stopped taking Stonebridge lightly. Stonebridge went all the way to the state finals.
Indeed. All right, well, there's your softball update. Up on the docket is Scotty, but honestly, hopefully you're TiVoing the show as usual, and you can just rewind it and listen to the interview because it was really good. Let's talk a little bit more about another impossible trivia question for the good folks at home, BJ.
Well, you mentioned Stonebridge, Paul, and we'll get a chance to talk a little bit about them during soccer. But before we get to soccer, we want to mention a little soccer trivia.
Hey now.
And now this is how you know it's really impossible trivia, because you mentioned it today in the office, Greg. Nobody knows anything about soccer.
It is
all right,
the
folks at
international
home.
game of,
What Northern Region boys soccer program has won the most AAA state soccer titles?
Paul, care to take a guess?
No.
All right,
It's too impossible.
I'm gonna say Lake Braddock.
And Greg, it's interesting you should say Lake Braddock.
Why is that?
Almost as if you had it written down somewhere for you. Almost. I'm not saying that's what happened.
Yeah.
Lake Braddock, what an incredible soccer program, and they're doing it again this year on both sides. Boys and girls, and we'll get into breaking down our regional brackets. But let's take a gander here. Lake Braddock has won 5 titles as a boys soccer program. Girls, not far behind, has won a couple, soccer titles as well in the state title matchups. So Lake Braddock, 5 titles. Pretty incredible what they were able to do, 1982 through 83, 1989, 88 through 89, and also in 95. They're second only to Blacksburg, which has won 8 state titles in the state of Virginia.
There you go.
Thought it was definitely worth a mention for our Lake Braddocks.
And let's get right to the soccer talk, man. Lake Braddock wins the Patriot boys title 1-0 over West Springfield. The girls win the Patriot girls title in PKs over West Potomac. Kristen Bowers, Katie Dye, and Leslie Cade get the PKs to win that district title. they roll into regionals in a big way as usual. Both the Braddock boys and girls are in the second round of regionals. Those games scheduled for Thursday night.
And the Lake Braddock boys cruise past what was thought to be a scrappy team in McLean out of the Liberty District. 2-0 win. Lake Braddock girls 5-0, folks. I've got to mention this. There was 5 shutouts on the girls' side. So, you see those in the first round of regionals when ones are going against 4 seeds. But, wow, I mean, really, the dominance is showing in some of these programs. Lake Braddock, Greg, you having had the opportunity to cover them in the past several years, obviously showing that they are still the class of the region.
Oh, yeah, and there's some real fascinating games on the girls' side in regionals coming up this Thursday. I mean, you've got Yorktown and West Springfield. Yorktown has established itself as one of the premier girls' soccer programs in the region. They've always been good. I think they've been elevated to great in the last couple of years. Braddock and Chantilly are playing in the second round. West Potomac and Centerville are in the second round. Those are very, very interesting matchups. But I think when all is said and done, I think you can look at Lake Braddock coming out of the bottom of the bracket. I think that you can look at either West Springfield or West Potomac coming out of the top of the bracket. So in theory, we're going to have a Patriot District final in the regional finals, in theory.
And these regional games for the girls will be played tomorrow night as well as the boys, that tomorrow night being Thursday, Paul. Let's jump to you real quick. You got a chance to see a doubleheader in the Liberty District Finals, Langley versus Stonebridge, both boys and girls, and here we are again talking about Stonebridge, but you saw an incredible game, quadruple overtime, Langley boys take out the Stonebridge boys. What did you see out of Langley that impresses you, and can Stonebridge jump up and bite anybody?
Well, what I saw for the most part is Langley dominated the game for the most part. They kept the ball down at Stonebridge's goal, and they were scoring more. Their goals were more from technique and whatnot. But Stonebridge, you got to hand it to them. They came back. It was 3-1 coming into the end of the game. Stonebridge grabs 2 quick goals. I mean, they're tenacious. They didn't stop at all. And then so we go through 4 overtimes.
Wow.
And there's 3 yellow cards. I mean, it was the crowds were into it. There was the kids were real emotional, and then off a corner kick, header right into the goal, and Langley gets his second straight.
And the Langley girls really started off as ranked in several publications, top team, and they kind of faded towards the end of the year, and apparently did so in the district finals against Stonebridge. What did you see out of the Langley girls? Are they a viable team to maybe make a run at the regional tournament title?
Well, what I saw from that, aside from different from the boys one was it was 7 goals scored. Here with Stonebridge Langley, there was 1 goal scored, and it was even matched the whole time. It could have gone either way with the Stonebridge Langley, but Stonebridge pulled it out, and I think both teams can make some serious noise in the regional tournament.
And you got a chance to talk to Coach Bibby over at Langley, and she did give you an interesting fact about beating a team 3 times. Talk a little bit about how difficult that is.
Well, they lost to Stonebridge in the regular season, and so I said, what happens if you meet them again in regionals? You lost twice, and she goes, it's hard to beat a team 3 times in a row. So they're looking forward to it. They're looking forward to maybe meeting Stonebridge again in the regionals.
There you go. I want to mention boys bracket regionals. Second round is Thursday. Third round semifinals next Thursday. Finals June 2nd. A couple of intriguing matchups. West Springfield Robinson is a matchup in the second round. Braddock is bracketed right now. If Langley can get past Yorktown in the second round, we're going to get Braddock and Langley in the regional semifinals in a match that a lot of people probably feel could be a regional final if they were bracketed differently. It's a shame when you get those 2 teams playing in the same bracket, and one of them's not going to states. But
Yorktown, the sleeper, I believe, of the regional tournament, just had a hot year. I think they're a number 2 seed. I think that's scary for Langley. I think Langley's kind of skated by on the seat of its pants. They got some players back that were injured early in the season and have kind of had a little bit of a rebirth. But watch out for Yorktown. That's a team that's going to jump up and bite people.
Looking briefly at lacrosse, the regional finals were as we're taping this evening, I believe. Who wound up making it, and who's going to states, do you think?
Well, Paul got a chance to see some of the Concord District finals for boys and girls, Oakton versus Robinson. And those were some games that he saw hard-fought battles. The Oakton boys, Paul, 3-time state champions, lost to the Robinson boys. Kind of set the table for the region tournament, and I guess we'll walk the folks at home through who's in the finals.
That's another thing that you see when Robinson coming new to the district is 3 times for Oakton, but Robinson comes in fresh, and there you go. I mean, they upset. So,
and the Robinson boys did get a chance to upset the Oakton boys, and that's something that I think a lot of people were waiting for Woodson to do, or for somebody else to do, and I think the Woodson boys did do that. The Woodson boys knocked off the mighty 3-time unofficial state champion Cougars by a gigantic margin, 12-2, folks.
Yeah.
That's no score that Oakton has seen, I believe, since Tony Gray has been at Oakton, the coach over there for 5 years. I don't think they've ever seen such a dramatic loss to a regional opponent. Last time they lost a region game was to Westfield last year, I believe. So the Oakton Cougars get knocked off by Brandon Butler and the Woodson Cavaliers. Butler scored 7 goals in the Liberty District final.
You get Robinson Woodson in the championship game this evening, and obviously that's a bit of a rivalry. Those two programs have been good for a long time, and plus they kind of draw from the same talent pool in that area of the world. Langley and Oakton were scheduled to play tonight as well in a consolation game. How's this working this year at the tournament?
They're only taking 3 from each region for the first year of the official state tournament sponsored by the Virginia High School League, and it's great to have it. I talked to a photographer I was sending out there today, and he said, so it actually means something this year, and so they're having consolation games. The boys and girls consolation games were all played at Oakton, and the finals were all played at Woodson. So we will be sure to get you those scores as soon as we can. Check the website for those, connectionnewspapers.com. But as of now, we know Robinson took on Woodson in the boys' final, and Oakton took on Robinson in a rematch of the Concord District final, which was a 12-11 victory, I believe, for the Oakton Cougars, who were upset last year in the region tournament final by Ashley McCulloch and the Woodson Cavaliers.
One of our favorites here in the Fairfax Sports Report. Oakton makes the finals by beating Yorktown.
Right.
Robinson ekes out a victory over Loudoun Valley, which shocked everybody. Valley and Yorktown are in the consolation match scheduled for this evening, so one of those teams will make states, which I think is a pretty interesting situation when you consider that Yorktown and Loudoun Valley are both schools that basically got lacrosse probably within the last 7 years.
And it's interesting because the state tournament this year, fellas, it's not just northern region, it's not just all these teams from down in Virginia Beach, because a lot of this, they don't have that down there. It's the Northwest region matching up against the northern region, and it's region 2 matching up against northern, and it's just it's a big concoction of all these programs. It's not just all these AAA teams. It's Region 2 stuff being filtered in as well, and Loudoun Valley certainly proving that they have a little bit of moxie too to kind of last them through the tournament.
Like the cut of their jib.
Yes,
Good
sir.
moxie. Hey, all right. So lightning round, point counterpoint time. Cubs. All right, listen to me.
No, I don't never listen.
How long would you suspend that knucklehead who punched A.J. Brzezinski in the face after he touched home plate in a delicate way?
Oh, yeah. First of all, I would not suspend him. I would, all right, first of all, let me go to the R-rated version here. Folks at home, please don't listen to this if you're a parent of a baseball or softball player. And if you're a softball player, please don't listen to this advice.
Yes.
Major leagues only, okay? Mm-hmm. He showed him up. Brzezinski showed up Barrett. He slapped the plate after knocking him over when he didn't even have the ball. I would never say it's okay to hit somebody, but I can't. So it's kind of like Chris Rock agreeing with OJ. Not saying he should have done it, but I can just understand why. I can just understand why. So, I can understand why he did it. Yeah. I think that the penalty will show that the commissioner will probably understand why he did it too.
How many games would you give Barrett if you were Bud Selig?
I'd give him none. It's White Sox Cubs. You make an octagon and you just let it happen.
Yeah, it's great. You know what? I'd give him 30 games, and I'll tell you why. Because how are casual fans ever going to watch baseball on television if you don't ban fighting?
Right. It's UFC now, according to Paul. You just put him in an
You're
octagon.
the big hockey fan, though.
Right. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Nobody wants to watch fighting, right? So I mean, people will literally stop watching baseball if all these fights happen, won't they? Or will they watch all the highlights of the fight on SportsCenter that night and try to find out incessantly for the next few days what happens to the guys because the fight really actually created more interest than took away interest in baseball?
When it's White Sox Cubs, I think you need a fight to make it interesting because the White Sox are the anti-champion. And the Cubs, let's be honest, they're terrible.
Anti-champion mean? What does that even mean?
It's like the Spurs winning the NBA, and that's a perfect segue into the next
Hey now,
topic. Nobody
NBA
wants to see them win the
NBA
title.
playoffs, my friend. Well, you won't have to this
Thank
season. Thank you
God.
to Mark Cuban's
Thank
boys.
you.
NBA postseason, we've got Mavericks and Suns in the West. We've got the Heat and the Pistons in the East. Who do you believe will be in the finals, and who will win the NBA championship? BJ Kubaroulis.
Okay, so to start of the year, I remember speaking to you, Mr. Wyszynski, and I'm going to rub your face in it as I did earlier today. I said Miami might as well not even play the season because Miami just has hands down the best roster in the league.
That's right.
Where I was told by a man by the initials GW that they were just a bunch of names.
Yes,
and
on
you
paper.
know they were on paper just a
Yeah.
bunch of names. And I think a bunch of those guys have stepped up. And I think that I did say last time we were on the show that Detroit Dallas would be the final. I believe it will still be the final, even though Miami is hot,
Paul?
like the Heat.
Paul, what?
Who's going to be in the finals?
It's the Heat, obviously.
All
We
right.
already saw it happen.
Yeah.
You saw how LeBron, one person, can scare the Pistons, can almost beat the Pistons. When you got Shaq and Dwayne Wade, you can't stop that.
And in the West?
I'll take the Mavs. I'm
All
just
right.
going to throw it out
See,
there.
I'm the complete opposite. I think it's going to be the Heat and it's going to be the Suns
Wow.
in the
It'll
finals.
be, that'll be a hot topic. Heat
Hey
and
now,
Suns,
hey,
baby.
woo! Spicy. I love the fact that the Suns are the first NBA team that I've seen that it looks like you're watching Kentucky. I mean, there's every guy on the court can go out there and hit a three. And that's the most dangerous thing I've ever seen. When they're shooting, they're the best team in the league, hands down. They demolished the Clippers in Game 7 because they shot so hot. I'm not that impressed with the Heat's defense. They're going to win the NBA championship.
It's going to be an incredible game, series between the Heat and the Mavs, only because nobody has a true big man, and it's
Yeah.
going to be a shootout. And
There
I
you go.
think it's going to be nice.
All right, folks. All right, coming up, please do check out the stuff that's coming up on the web, www.fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. Check it out for schedules, scores, bios, photo galleries, the whole gambit. And thank you, CCI Screen Printing, for all of your screen printing needs, 703-978-0257. And thank you, Quality Care Ford Service Center, servicing all makes and models, 703-383-6299. And thank you, me, for writing Glow Pucks and 10-Cent Beer, the 101 worst ideas in sports history, available wherever books are sold.
You know, I got to bring it up, Mr. Wyszynski, for you folks at home that have been following this show for quite a while. Greg was on Cold Pizza, an ESPN show, went to New York for that experience. Greg, quickly, just give us an insight on what it was to truly make it.
Dana Jacobson is very beautiful in person. I got to talk to Bert Sugar about Mike Tyson, and they actually do have cold pizza in the green room, which I thought was kind of neat.
Nice.
So it really was that exciting.
That sounds
Nah, it was
exciting.
awesome. It's a great night. Thanks. If anybody's watching from Cold Pizza, for having me on. And thank you for watching the Fairfax Sports Report. Join us next week for more fun and frivolity and playoff action.
Welcome, Paul Frummel.
Hey now.
And more Paul chiming in.